to Crashing Game Night. My name is Matt Diorio. Tonight, the former host of the PlayStation Blogcast and indie writer Nick Suttner is crashing Game Night with us tonight.
Hello.
We are joined by the beanied one, Gerard Barrera.
And hello and salutations, greetings. Thank you everyone for joining. Oh, hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? How you doing?
And of course, babyface Theowalski.
I just love every time he intros. It's just like he paused for a quick second. He's like, "Oh, these guys are here too.
Oh, hey,
It's
guys.
not just me."
That's like, see, you got it. That's the point.
Yep.
Like,
And
oh,
then-
hey, guys.
And then the man with the couch, holding it down for our guests, is the one and only Lion's Mane, Jason Belidio.
It going, guys. How's it going tonight?
Boom, baby.
Hope I'm loud and proud. Nick, thank you again. Welcome to our couch tonight.
It looks very comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining.
You know,
Pleased to be occupying.
Did you get some sun, Jason?
me, yeah, I've been out.
I've
I've been
got
outside,
some color, dude.
I've been outside a
Dude,
lot.
you've been taking advantage of the free COVID life now.
No,
The vaccinated life.
Vaccinated life.
no, actually, I've been training outside a lot lately
Ooh,
at work.
Nice,
So
man.
There you go.
it's
Nice.
I got that huge
Oh, the
tan.
farmer's tan.
farmer's tan. Look at that.
Yeah,
Boy,
dude.
Just
Love it.
Yep.
Good.
Classic.
classic.
So Nick, how you doing? It's been trying to get you on here for a little while now.
I know I'm not
Get-
great with answering Twitter DMs, turns out, but I appreciate you
Very
staying on top of me
elusive.
because
No, absolutely.
Yes.
I'm elusive. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm holding it down here in Oakland, and it's sunny and nice until we're all like choked by smoke in a few months, inevitably.
Right?
Sorry, catching me at like a downer climate change moment. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm trying to embark on some new projects and things, and you're catching me at like a particularly interesting time of like spinning up new stuff and
Sweet.
just
Ooh,
got
very
fun
nice,
working.
very
I also work part-time at Panic, who are a publisher based in Portland who published Untitled Goose Game and Firewatch.
nice.
So always
Love
doing
that.
some
Love
fun
that
stuff.
game.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so yeah, lots of fun stuff going on. And
Good
it's I'm trying to be part of the world reopening a little bit, but very conservatively and carefully. So that's interesting to navigate as well. That's for everybody, I'm sure.
It does feel weird just that everything's starting to wake back up.
Yeah, and I think I think the Bay Area is maybe been sort of the most careful place in the country, perhaps throughout the whole thing. But even so here, it's still, in California, it's like,
Oh yeah.
rough in most places. Thankfully, the numbers here are good, but
Mhm.
yeah, it still feels weird to like just, I don't know, be invited to indoor things and try to reckon with that.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
good. It's
I feel like it's kind of weird too when you go out and about and you're like going to a restaurant and everyone's just like, hanging out like it's the same old thing again, like nothing has happened.
yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know before we get into anything, I do want to kind of give some shout outs really quick. First, one, thoughts and prayers, as always, like we kind of talked about last week, to those to the family and friends of the victims of the condo collapse down in Miami, as they found more victims for that. So thoughts and prayers out to them, as well as thoughts and prayers out to the folks in New York City right now who are dealing with mass flooding from Hurricane Alma kind of going through and hitting there. Saw some video of the Major Deegan, which is a major kind of like freeway, throughway down there, and it is completely flooded out. Cars,
Jeez.
water up to their
Wow.
doors and stuff like that. So hopefully they kind of get dried out a little bit soon. And then a couple birthday wishes. So
Ooh.
last
Oh.
Thursday, I missed it. Q, John Bentley's son,
Hey,
Hey.
it was his birthday
Hey.
last
happy
week.
birthday, Q.
Happy birthday, Q.
And also shout out to friend of the podcast, Danny Pena, whose birthday is today.
Hey,
Hey,
Hey.
Pena.
So-
Yes.
Happy
Happy birthday,
birthday.
brother.
Yep. So quick
Nice,
shout outs to
man.
them and whatnot. So kind of let's get into this. So for those that aren't quite familiar with Nick, those that aren't really on the that are more fans of like Nintendo and Xbox stuff like that, and not more so on the PlayStation side. Let's give kind of an overview of your career, Nick. So, you've worked at Oculus, which you went to after PlayStation.
Yep. You have written 2 books, Last Guardian, Extraordinary Story, and Shadow Colossus.
Wow.
You were the script editor and writer on Celeste, the writer and script editor on Guacamelee 2. You were lead writer on Bloodroots, script editor for Raise the Dead, lead writer on Carto, and contributing writer and editor on the game that we saw, one of the games we saw featured in the PlayStation State of Play today, Jet: The Far Shore, which I didn't even know you had worked on that until after I was looking at some things on it today. And I've been looking forward to that since we initially saw the preview of it back at the launch and stuff like that. So it's good seeing gameplay of that. And then from a PlayStation perspective, you started off as a product evaluator, then you shifted over to developer relations. Some of the highlights, which these games, folks that are in the indies as well as follow the podcast as well will know some of these names. And The Witness, which was one I love that game. It was a great Myst-style type game that we haven't had in a while. Yeah, Transistor and Bastion.
Nice.
I freaking loved Bastion. The narration was just made that game just that extra cool.
Yeah, so good.
Oh man, it was so good.
Octodad and Axiom Verge, and you also were involved with the PlayStation VR.
Nice.
And then, kind of like what we alluded to, is you were the co-founder and the co-host of the official PlayStation. It's now a podcast, but at the time it was the blogcast.
I know. I don't support that change.
It's still, Nick. It still feels weird to say official podcast instead of blogcast. It's just there's something about it.
I think there's probably a good chance I suggested that name, but I can't claim for sure. I don't know. I would have fought hard against it if I was still there, but it's fine.
Yeah.
I get it.
And anyway, so you were part of that podcast for 213 episodes.
Dang, man.
Impressive.
So I gotta ask, what's it feel like to know that something you started just recently celebrated its 400th episode?
Well, firstly, I didn't know it was 400, and I'm sad they didn't invite me on. But no, it's very. It makes me really happy.
We'll blame Sid.
We will blame Sid. Actually, I hung out with him last week, so I should have blamed him in person. Yeah, I mean, it's and it's hard for me to sort of think of that outside of also my context of like being good friends with those guys, because I still keep in touch with Sid and Justin and Ryan and like Jeff once in a while, and sort of the whole old crew. And that was a really fun time and a really fun stretch for me. And before that, I started in the game. I mean, that was like an A+ recollection of my career. Thank you. Before that, when I first started podcasting was back in my press days. I worked at EGM and OneUp.com for a while and started doing some podcasts there.
Right.
Right.
I remember getting those all the time every week.
Yeah, me too. You're like, I haven't heard that name in years.
That seemed to be like my go-to magazine that I pick up at the airport.
Yeah.
Reading material for my flight.
Yeah,
me too. Long before I worked there, and so that was really fun. And that's kind of where I got a taste for podcasting, and that was so I started in 2008-ish, which is weird to think about at this point.
Right.
And did I don't know, a few dozen episodes on a couple of the different shows before they laid most of us off. And I really had a taste for it, and I thought we were sort of, doing fun stuff with it. And for the first few years of PlayStation, my roles were pretty sort of internal facing and kind of secretive. And like I went from being a pretty public person in the press to like a very private person, career wise. And and certainly I was on this product evaluation team, again, an internal facing job, not social media or anything external. So when Sid got hired, actually there, I talked a little bit to Jeff Rubenstein, who was running things before that. But when he hired Sid, I talked to Sid, and I had known Sid from his Game Pro days.
I forgot Jeff was there.
Yeah, totally. He was been at Xbox.
He's now at Xbox forever.
And so I knew Sid a little bit from his Game Pro days because because we were both press at the time.
Mhm.
And I was like, Sid, you got to help me start up a podcast here. We just need to do it. It's crazy that PlayStation doesn't have one, which like, you know, in 2009, or this would have been, I guess, a couple years after 2011, let's say, like, you know, it wasn't that crazy, but it's like a little bit crazy. It's like a bunch of the big brands were starting to get into that, and there was just I think we had the right people, and so that was definitely stepping way outside of my role at the time. But I think because I had this press background, they trusted me to not like say anything that was going to get us all fired. So and I also had the background knowledge of like just basically sort of editing and hosting and getting stuff up and running just because I'd done it before. So yeah, it was
Nice.
you know, Sid really sort of championed that to get it up off the ground, and then just had fun with that for a long time until my like last week there. And I think I've been on it once or twice since then, just as like a guest. But yeah, that was great. And then since then, after I sort of left, I quit my like real jobs, as I call them, which was about 4 years. I've been working for myself and doing indie dev stuff, and
Man,
I
I wish I
also
could say
now
that.
do a podcast called Eggplant: The Secret Lives of Games, which is like a game design show. I'm talking to developers and stuff.
Nice.
So I went a while with that podcasting, and it was kind of driving me crazy. So I spun that up again with some other really smart game dev friends, and so still get to like get my fill of that. But it's, you know, that's a very different kind of show, and it's like it's really fun sometimes, like dropping into a crew like yours and just like chatting about games and
Games
what's
in
interesting
general.
to all of us. And, yeah.
I have a question. So during your first couple of years when you were doing the podcast, what was your setup like? How did you have to figure it out back then?
Oh man, I'm like, what can I say that wouldn't get anyone annoyed? It was kind of like it wasn't, I guess I'll say it was a thing that we all did on top of our regular jobs. It wasn't like a part of my job. I was kind of like allowed to do it. And even for the guys whose job was like social media, this outward facing stuff, it was a thing that they, you know, we recorded like after work or like sort of in spare time, and just volunteered our time kind of more as a passion project. And what, you know, maybe later it became a little more formalized of a thing, but and we recorded it like in Sid's office forever. Like we didn't, I think now the last few years, pretty much right after I left, I finally got like a dedicated recording space, like a nice like sound baffled room. But when I was there, mostly it was like in Sid's office with some mics on the desk and kind of a whole setup we'd haul out. And so it was pretty like seat of our pants for years, because we were just like, you know, our jobs were busy and we barely had time to do it, but we managed to do it and put together a show that I was proud of. But
I appreciate, yeah, that's
Nice,
cool, man.
nice.
So
The
like you
setup
probably had the cameras like set into the laptop and then the mics set out, and that you kind of, that's how you kind of did it, or
no, I mean, no cameras even. It was not a thing that was
really?
ever filmed. Yeah, it was just audio. So we had like sort of a full on like mixer. I mean, this was also when we started, it wasn't like, there were USB mics, but I think they weren't quite standard. So this was like real, what, you know, kind of more like, what are they called? I don't even know. Like if I were to plug the big
Audio
cable
ones.
into,
yeah,
audio exactly. So like plug that into a bigger cable, which then goes into a mixer, which then goes USB out to a laptop. So like, I think we had something closer to that. So, you know, I think now it's way easier and more streamlined. And we didn't even have a great interface to sort of like dial in guests, because that wasn't a thing that existed until years later. So
they had to physically be there if you wanted a guest.
Yeah. I think once or twice we did maybe like a weird phone call thing that just was not good. But and thankfully, because it's PlayStation, you have like developers and people of note swinging by all the time. So we were able to get guests, and just being in the Bay Area. But but yeah, and I maybe they're doing more of that now. But yeah, it was kind of a shoestring thing for a while. Maybe not what you'd expect from. And I think the show we put out, I think I you know, I would have been proud to say that I don't think it sort of had those scars. It didn't feel like this hastily produced thing we'd sort of wing it every week, but that's kind of how it was at the time.
Nice. I gotta ask you.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Whose
You gotta appreciate that. That's awesome.
Whose idea really was it to start doing Sid's Mystery Amazon box?
Oh man, yeah. Oh, boy. That was such a fun segment. I think because we recorded in Sid's office, he just had like so many boxes sitting around that sometimes would sit there for like days before he would open them. And so I'd get excited. I'm like, Sid, how are you not opening these boxes? And these are like things that, these weren't like, you know, whatever, like gaming swag that was arriving from a publisher or something. This was like things that he ordered for himself. And I'm like, so there's like toothbrushes in here or something. Like what? I need to learn about your life. And
there was like spaghetti.
What's in this one? Like, oh, that was boring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool, man.
I think it was kind of like an extension of again doing this as a thing because like we wanted to do it together to hang out, talk about games, and have fun, and like it wasn't this sort of corporate mandated structured thing where we had to like hit certain beats or whatever. So it was like, yeah, let's have fun and talk about what's in Sid's office, and like I don't know, I would.
You had a lot of freedom to play with it to make it
Nice,
to make it your own,
nice.
which is awesome.
Yeah. And you know, again, I think there's a line to walk there where it's like it was a positive show. We weren't going to like talk about games we didn't like. It's not really our place for us to do that there, but there's plenty to talk about that we did like. So yeah. It was a fun time. I missed those guys.
Nick, it was great. I mean, for the setup that you describe, it didn't sound like you guys were kind of running that type of a setup. It was always clean and very well put together.
No, thanks. I appreciate that. And I think, you know, if yeah, I think just because it was sort of our passion project on top of our day jobs, and it was something we just wanted to start and get the ball rolling. And then once you start a thing like that, you kind of got to continue it, right? You can't just have it go away. So yeah, exactly.
Case in point,
right? Case in point. You know, we do this on top
example.
of we do this on top of our day jobs. You know, I start at 6 a.m. on you know, here in Arizona, and you know, Jerry works all day, Theo works all day, Jason's, you know, hanging out at Costco all day.
I wake up when we start recording, maybe in about an hour or two. So I'm like wide awake, and I'm like, oh, cool. You know, having a couple drinks.
Yeah.
So with that, Nick, so what made you gravitate towards the indie side of gaming?
I think so. I mean, this really started back in my press days again, kind of like 2007-ish when I was working at those outlets. And at the time, this was kind of the early days of Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Network. And I reviewed a lot of those games at the time. And I somehow ended up becoming like the indie guy at those outlets. And partially just because they were smaller games and I was newer and I got assigned to them. But for me, I mean, and still, I think that's where a lot of the innovation and risk and interesting stuff comes from in the industry. That's what's great about indie games. And I think, you know, and there's lots of reasons for that. You can afford to take risks when you don't have like, you know, hundreds of people's livelihood and huge tens of $1 million budgets of marketing and whatever like at stake. It's like you can be a little riskier, and consoles and such had sort of just opened up to being able to self-publish or at least have like Microsoft publish your indie game, things like that. So you know, I reviewed like Braid back in the day and kind of some of these like seminal early indie games, and try to give them a lot of airtime there, and like and I did a podcast with John Blow there at the time, and that's how I first met him, and that was years before I ended up like helping bring The Witness to PlayStation. So this stuff kind of all comes back, but and I think because we were very empowered at that job to just sort of lean into coverage of things that we really liked, I was like, cool, let me fight to get these cool weird indie games. I mean, and it wasn't just me by any means. A lot of other people on the staff had this sort of taste, and it's like, let's talk about these on our one-up show, which is like a fun web show we had, or on the podcast. Let's like give real airtime to these indie games because they're doing something really different and special and unique, and that just sort of spoke to my personal aesthetic tastes, and I guess that's a sort of more ineffable thing to an extent, but. So yeah, so when I was like the indie guy, and then again they like laid off all of us, and I was like, well, I wound up through PlayStation through a series of events, and did this product evaluator role. But whenever I got a chance to work on indie games that were coming through, and this was like when that funnel started to open up like just a bit more, and people could self-publish, and there were sort of some good momentum there. Those were always the games that I got most excited about, and those were also the developers who were sort of the most like receptive to feedback and just fun to work with. And I started kind of moonlighting, and I go to the Game Developers Conference here, and I'd go hang out in the Independent Games Festival, and I'd talk to an indie and I'd be like, your game's great, you should put it on PlayStation. I can't really help you myself because that's not my job, but let me like maybe connect you to someone who can, and sort of did some of that and kind of moonlighted as like this indie developer relations guy until it kind of became my job, along with some other people. But
so you were kind of like the
all about who you
agent.
know,
the go-to guy.
Yeah,
it's definitely the go-to guy.
well, yeah, one of a few, well, not just me, but just try to, similarly at PlayStation, try to push for like giving more time and attention and love to a section of folks who are making some of the most interesting games, and whether that whether they are indie or not, however you define indie, whether that's sort of spiritually based on the type of game or the actual literal independence of the studio or the size of the team or the size of the budget. Regardless, I think indies just tend to make some of the more interesting games, and therefore I think it's worth paying attention to, regardless of any sort of bucketing as indie.
Yeah. So Nick, what was it like, at least from your point of view, trying to being that spearhead to the evolution of the indie mentality at PlayStation?
I think a lot of us were, again, we were sort of moonlighting in some of the stuff of like, let me go talk to indies because I'm interested in that space and I want to try to help them. And at the time, I think the leadership was supportive of what we were doing, and that we had this fund called the Pub Fund, like Publisher Fund, where we sort of got to help fund some games and help them come to PlayStation in a bigger way. And so I was sort of involved in that. And then when Adam Boyes came on board, who you might remember from, he was a longtime PlayStation guy, and he runs Iron Galaxy today, or one of the guys who runs that, who
most
just got
infamous E3 starts.
Yeah, and
him and Shu going, this is how you trade a game.
Right, yeah, exactly. And congrats to Adam, because Iron Galaxy just, I think today they won one of like the best places to work for. So so when Adam came on board, I think he really also helped. He sort of saw what we were doing in this little corner with indie stuff and helped like give that a bigger stage, as it were, like literally at E3, and put indies on stage for the first time and do a lot of that. So really it was just a lot of us pursuing things we cared about personally, and like some of it was selfish for me. It's like I'm a console guy, I want to play your game on PlayStation, so let me help you do that.
There you
go. So let me ask you this: with all that hard work that you and the team did back then, including Adam before he left PlayStation, how does it make you feel when you see those reports now in the media that the devs are finding PlayStation to be almost anti-indie dev right now?
Especially being someone who was at the forefront. You were at the front of the line when it came to PlayStation and Sony and indies.
I mean, I got a lot of feelings about it, of course, inevitably having been part of that before, but there's a lot of great people over there, and I still, now as an external developer, I work with them, and I think working with any big company and any platform, there's like a lot of challenges. And I think coming from the days where the whole industry was set up to service like retail publishers making discs, like it takes a long time to adjust from that to servicing sort of a whole different type of publishing and doing everything digitally. And there's struggles with all platforms in different ways. I think I don't know. It's a thing that everyone I know takes seriously and wants the best for developers. And the people I work with there are really genuine and hardworking and want the same. So it's tough for me to because I don't work there now, right? It's tough for me to comment on that, or what changes they are or aren't making or whatever, or reacting to that. But yeah, I work for Panic as well, and we are publishing a game called Nor, Play With Your Food, this weird sort of food experimental art sim. We're publishing that on PS5 and really excited about that. Nice. And they've been really supportive of putting us on their various media channels, and we had a video in I forget if it was a State of Play or something else a while back, but
Play with your food, huh?
I'm sorry.
Playing with your food, huh?
Playing with your food, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah, so I of course it's it doesn't feel great to read those headlines, but I know there's a lot of people there fighting for making things better, to be the best platform for indies. So yeah, that's
so from the sounds of it, I know not to put you on, but it's more like you're finding it good versus these might just be outliers that just happen to be grabbing the big attention, where they just scream loud enough to say, hey, we're not getting attention, and everybody's picking it up and making it
no, I mean, I don't want to devalue anyone else's experience, I think. And I think the experience anytime being a small, I mean, in any industry, whatever, being the small company working with the big company, there's always going to be struggles that come with that. And I don't want to diminish anyone else's struggles. And I think, every storefront is really crowded. And that's one of the challenges, is standing out and getting featured in any way. So yeah, I think that's totally valid criticisms. And I don't, the problem even of that sort of thing of storefront being crowded still wasn't as extreme as it is now. So I don't really know how you deal with that.
Yeah.
Thankfully in some ways it's not my problem to solve, but certainly I'm someone who has to fight for that too, alongside other people to sort of get games I work on supported in different ways.
And you bring up a valid point about a crowded storefront, because honestly, one of my favorite indie games, I didn't even know existed until Theo was playing it in line at E3, and that was Hue. I absolutely love Hue, but I never knew anything about it until I saw it being played. And sure enough, here it is on the store, but it's buried in between all the other noise. So I think that does bring up a very valid point, that it's one of those things that I think that at least with the PlayStation Store as it is right now, there, at least on the PS5, there's that indie section on there that you can at least go in there, and they kind of have the indie games kind of segregated a little bit from a PS5 perspective. But from an indie developer standpoint and game maker, is where do you see the biggest challenges that you have in this current climate of gaming, where you've got Game Pass and everything else? What are those biggest challenges that you face?
I mean, like you said, it is standing out for sure, right? It's like even bigger than any one platform. It's like there's just tons of releases, right? There's like 1,000+ games released every day, I think, on Steam alone. So and again, I think there's storefronts are trying to sort of like deal with that in different ways and sort of let the good stuff bubble to the top. It's whether that's automated or curated or whatever, but that that is a challenge for exposure, and I think that's also why people are leaning more heavily on things pre-release, like having some social media presence, or like there was a whole article I read recently, I want to say it was on Vice, about people using TikTok to like market their indie games, which is like this huge under-tapped resource, and starting Discord communities and talking to streamers and doing like early access stuff. Like there's a lot of things you can and depending on the game probably in your resources should be doing to sort of drum up this audience beforehand, so you're not entirely reliant on day one of someone featuring your game on their storefront. Because I think that's not something that like there isn't room for every good game to be featured. So I think you have to sort of assume that you're going to need to fight for yourself, and just do your best to gather that interest. And that's not like a expertise of mine, definitely. So I would hope to sort of like work with people on my team or hire another team who has that expertise to help me stand out. Or working with a publisher is another way, of course. Like a lot of these publishers have pre-existing relationships with platforms, and have these set marketing channels and have their Twitter followers and everything, so it can speak directly to people.
Is there, when you talk about the platform stakeholders and stuff, what can they do, when we're talking, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, I mean, all of them, right? Is there something that they can do better in order to help promote indie gaming as a whole? Not just specific games, like you mentioned, where they're spotlighted, but as a whole to kind of drive it the same aspect that you see kind of like AAAs.
That's a good question. I mean, I think they've been doing it in an ever increasing way over the past 10 years or so, since these times I'm talking about when self-publishing became a thing, and trying to find, like you mentioned with State of Play today, right? Where like that also, which I just watched like a second before I hopped on here with you guys, like watch the Jet video. That was great to see. I didn't know. I mean, I did work on the game, but I'm not involved like day to day in what's happening with it. So that was a nice surprise to me to see that they put some gameplay footage and stuff out there. So I think platforms are certainly doing it, and in a bunch of different ways are trying to cater to indies being like a meaningful part of the ecosystem. But again, it's like that's a big change from how things used to be, before digital games in general. So yeah, I guess it takes generations to do this, and it takes I work with people at all these platforms who like deeply care about the games, but they also have to go fight for these games internally, and help get them featured and get this kind of support. And so yeah, ultimately, again, as a dev, I think if you can get a partnership with a platform or whatever, like great. If you want to work with the publisher to help support your game, great. But I think it's a fight, but just as it is with any other medium, like just as it is with film or web comics or anything else, it's like making art that you want to be able to like do that sustainably and build your life or build a studio or whatever. And it's like, how do you stand out from the crowd? I wish I knew, because I would be doing that in different aspects of my life. The biggest thing I'll say, which I gave a talk on for a few years, which is on YouTube now. I gave it a GDC like 2 or 3 years ago. Sort of the final form of that talk is well, now I'm forgetting the name, but it's called Platforms Are People to the Importance of Finding Your Champion. And basically the premise of this talk is that platforms are sort of not this monolithic entity like storefronts you release your games to. It's, PlayStation caring about your game or Nintendo caring about your game isn't really a thing, like, because that's just a company, and it's people there that care about your game. And so I think finding people, whether it's at a platform or a publisher or in the press, like people, finding the right people to get excited about your game, and seeing what their tastes are and sort of getting on their radar so that they can go help you do that and help like promote your game to the world. I think that's really important. So I think finding those champions, and again, I would like to think that's true of like in all the entertainment industries and whatever. I think that's a really important piece of it. So that's probably what I'd encourage other devs to do, and sort of where I've found some success.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So from the writing perspective, which is what you've done a lot with as well, is what are your biggest challenges when you're trying to write for that indie project or be part of like the script and stuff like that, when you're kind of going against, those AAA titles, like you said, kind of getting noticed, but also you see the advent more of these free-to-play games like Fortnite, Call of Duty, Apex Legends that, they kind of have a loose story in there, but there's no emphasis on story, but you see people more flocking to these free-to-play games.
Like what do I have in mind? Like writing it?
Yeah, when you're writing what kind of challenges do you guys see, like trying to make the script engaging enough to where you're getting kind of noticed a little bit more than just these guys going to the free-to-play to go play Fortnite or Call of Duty?
I think people who are going to go play that are going to go play that, and I think if you're spending most of your time playing Fortnite, like I think I've played maybe like a minute of Fortnite. Like I'm sure it's a great game. It's got to be a great game to be that popular. And I think if you're playing that, if that's the main thing you play, probably you're not really into stories in games, I would assume. Or maybe you play those less often, and then you're going to go dig that kind of stuff up. So it's honestly a thing that I can't really like hold in my mind while I'm working on something. Like I can't think about, I guess, like what other types of very different experiences are out there. I just have to focus on the thing I'm making and like, let's give this the most compelling narrative context. And that's a question I'm going through on a project I'm working on right now with some friends, is like, how much story do we want there to be in the game? Because even though I'm a writer, it's like I tend to prefer games with a very minimalist story and having more environmental storytelling and less dialogue. But that's not, that's some stuff I like. I love Final Fantasy games and things with a ton of dialogue. So I think it's about finding what is the right fit for the project. That's the real struggle, and then making it as good as you can. And like, I can iterate on a line of dialogue like forever, but you can't, because you have to draw a line and you have a finite budget and everything. So I think it's about like, that's the struggle, is doing the best you can in the framework of that game and trying to make it interesting. And even that's challenging enough, never mind thinking about like what else is happening in games. So I can't even get my head in the space, I think, of worrying about like, are people not going to play this narrative driven game because they're like playing Fortnite? Like I don't think I can stop that. So I just have to hope that we make a holistically compelling enough game that people do want to check it out.
Yeah,
nice.
No, definitely. Because I mean, like working on the Untitled Goose Game, that that has like was almost you make your own narrative, where they just give you tasks to do, and you're like, hey, you know what? How do I do this task? And like for like hours, me, my wife, my sister-in-law would just do the stupidest things just because you're like, hey, you get to have fun, like that's the whole point of it, and you get compelled by that,
that's a lot of my favorite types of games, is ones that are more performative on the part of the player. So you get to like express yourself and sort of make your own story in some sense in the framework of the game. And like Splunky is one of my favorite games ever. I've played hundreds of hours of both Splunky games. And that's another one too, where there's some story threaded throughout. There's a little bit of like text and a little bit of environmental story, but largely it's like the experience you're having is like this performative thing being pieced together through your actions and your relationship to the game, not like an overt, description of everything you're doing.
Yeah. And I feel that too, like going back to the indies, like, I feel that it's great that finally the indies are like super popular, especially in this current time. Like you can see, like, once one of them blows up, you have the flavor of the month again. You know, like Knockout City was one, Among Us was one for a long time, and Among Us had been out for many years beforehand, and it's just like it's that just one thing that just blows it up, and you know, it brings people to think like, oh, it's not just FPS, it's not just an RPG.
Yeah.
You know, indie kind of blends everything it wants to, and I love that part of the indie
That's a
scene.
good point.
Yeah,
That's a
totally.
very good point.
It's finally a valid genre. You
Yeah,
know,
it's a valid genre. It's not just like oh, like three guys put it together and it's this like DOS type it up. You know?
Well, and I think that's the ultimate sort of goal and result of indie development being legitimized in the way that it is now is like, you know, I see that there's value in promoting indies as like a group of creative, interesting games, but also at the same time, I think the way we talk and think about them now are just games alongside other games. Like you mentioned Bastion, and we can talk about Bastion. It's an amazing game in like every way, and you know what, Hades won like every game of the year last year, and it won, you know, it won like best action game, it won best writing, it won best art, like so up against things like Ghost of Tsushima, which is incredible, and on the other end of the spectrum in terms of like production size and everything. So we're just talking about indie games as games, and I think that's sort of the ultimate successful result. Is we don't need to. There doesn't need to be like a caveat or an asterisk or whatever that it's an indie game. It's like, no, it's just an incredible game.
Right.
You speak of Hades, I'll be spending money on it again once it hits the PlayStation Store.
Me too.
And I've got on my Switch. So of all the projects you've worked on up to this point, not including the ones that you haven't announced or that haven't released or anything yet, do you have a project that you hold most dear? That was like your favorite to work on?
I mean, I was like very honored and lucky to be able to work on Celeste as like the first game after I left Oculus, just because I think Celeste like resonated deeply with a lot of people, and I had a relatively small role in the team. Like I came in pretty late in development and helped sort of punch up the script, as it were. But I think that's just like a wonderful game, and I feel like I can compliment it as just a fan because it was great before I showed up, and I maybe I helped it make like 0.001% better, but that was just like a wonderful team and experience, and so that was just a really joy to work on and a great introduction for me into working in independent development more formally. So that was great. I think a game that I released or that I worked on that released this past fall called Carto. It's this really like cute sort of a puzzle adventure game with this map mechanic and published by Humble Games. That's developed by a Taiwanese team who I worked with as sort of their, I was just a fan of theirs years ago and ended up getting to know them and interviewed them for my Shout Out the Colossus book and some other stuff, and ended up coming on as kind of a consultant and then becoming their sort of lead writer and biz dev guy. Just because those are my two weird like skills that I sometimes do on the same game, even though they're very different. So that game I'm really proud of because I think I came in like early enough to have a meaningful impact on the narrative, and got to write some really bad jokes for, which was fun. And I think that game has just been received really warmly, and it's in Xbox Game Pass, which meant that just like a ton of people have played it, which is nice. So I can go on Twitter and search for Carto and like see people talking about it and sometimes pointing out jokes that I wrote and stuff, and that's just super fun for me. There was actually a really nice quick story I'll tell for that game. There's an event annually during Game Developers Conference here called Day of the Devs that Double Fine puts on, and they did this at the Alamo Drafthouse Theater here in San Francisco a couple of GDCs ago, and they had a thing where devs would come on and they would showcase their game, and they would sort of like play the demo and talk about the game for like
on the Alamo
movie
screen?
Theater. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Which was awesome. So so I went there to Leo, who's like the creative director and lead on the game, he was there presenting it, and I came just to watch it and support him. And I was watching him put on this demo, and that was actually the first time. So I'd come in and I had sort of like rewritten the dialogue in their demo. So that was the first time I had sort of my voice in the game, and I was watching the audience watch this demo and like laughing at these jokes. So I had like a theater where I go to 2 or 3 times a week in normal times, like a theater full of my peers like laughing at a joke that I wrote, and that I just kind of forgot that my dialogue was in the demo, and that was just like amazing experience for me and really encouraging.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that was great. And so that project I just really enjoyed and I'm really proud of. And it's out on like every platform for anyone who's interested. So yeah.
Not gonna lie, I'm
Switch,
actually purchasing it right
PlayStation.
now.
I just looked it up to find out which one of the platforms I got to buy it on. So I'll
I'm
support
going
it.
PC.
Cool.
Get on there. I'll get it on.
I think it's pretty similar across every platform. Honestly, it just depends what your preference is.
I'll go PlayStation.
And then I mean, Jet that you mentioned as well. Like,
Yep.
I've just been like such a huge fan of Super Brothers of Craig, the sort of the dude behind Super Brothers, and he's built this amazing team to help finish this game, and I was like lucky to be a small part of it. But I'm just really psyched to have another game out there from him, and for everyone else to get to experience it. And was really impressed by the gameplay video they put out today, because it's just that much more polished and intriguing than when
it feels a little bit like No Man's Sky in some regards.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I got that.
Which talking about, small teams and everything like that. You look at, Hello Games, that was one person really at the time really starting that project. So when you look back at your days at PlayStation with bringing these indies to the platform, do you have like a kind of like a top 5 list of your favorite games? I know you mentioned Spelunking, so we can kind of like
of a question as that.
That is
it's like choosing my top 5 children.
Right, exactly. It's.
Oh, I have a favorite.
Okay. You want to say it right now on the air? You can declare your favorite child for all of us.
Right now, Jerry knows it. Right now, my 16-month-old is dealing with teeth. He's got 2 teeth coming in right now. So he's not sleeping well unless he's held. So, I'm trying to help out because my wife now gets up at 4:30 in the morning to go to work. So because I work from home, I have the ability to where I can just literally get up at 5:45.
Yeah.
Walk down the hallway to the office and start working, so I kind of try and take care of it as much as possible. But as of late, he's been kind of keeping me up a little bit longer, kind of like
losing
he was
status.
like an infant. Just a little
knocked down a rank.
No, I love him. It's just it's just one of those things like right now.
It's a minimal margin between them.
It's also tough for me because I think a lot of these, like the devs I work with, are like really good friends of mine, and it's hard to sort of separate the fact, like I just value their friendship and therefore that I really value the projects really deeply. So some of them, for instance, like N++, I don't know if you guys have ever played the N series. It's like this incredible, really difficult platformer with like thousands of levels. And there was N+ was a game that I reviewed back in my press days, got to know the developers over the years, and then helped them bring N++, this very ambitious sequel to PlayStation. And Mare and Reagan, who are the devs behind it, like are 2 of my favorite people I've met in games. I'm still good friends with them, and I think that game is incredible, and it feels like they made it for me. And they will say themselves, like, one of the reasons they made it is because I wouldn't stop badgering them to like make it, and that I would try to help it and fund it via PlayStation. So like maybe in a small way.
N++, you bring that up. That used to be a common weekly topic amongst you guys on what levels you guys were getting to.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, that's really close to my heart. So there's a few like that, I guess. Like, and again, Sports Friends is another one, which is this like really crazy local multiplayer sort of suite of games, including Johann Sebastian Joust, which was like one of the more interesting games to play with the Move controller, where you had to like hold your controller still. And so friends try to like shove each other to get you to move the controller, and then you're out. So it's like this physical person tag game, which is amazing. You guys should all Google some video footage of this. Man. So my really good friend Doug, he's helped put together that package with people like Bennett Foddy and other amazing devs, and that I worked really closely on him with, and they did a Kickstarter that we sort of integrated the PlayStation stuff into, and back sort of early days of this stuff, and he's one of the co-hosts of my podcast as well now. So there's just people in my life like this that like projects are really meaningful to me because I just was a huge fan of them, and I managed to help them out at PlayStation, and then also just through that process I sort of made good friends out of it, and I think that's the most you can the best you can hope for from a job. So that's like a couple that jump to mind at least.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So with that, okay, so let's kind of get out of that space. Jason, I'll let you ask a question.
It's just cool hearing from like the indie perspective, because like a lot of people need to know like how do people find these like games out of nowhere? That's again, I remember we were saying earlier that like, you know, it's kind of hard for them to get the publisher. It's kind of hard for them to like find that like avenue of media that they're trying to get to. But I mean, like, it's like, it is difficult trying to find these like pinpoint ones unless like a streamer just like blows it up, you know, because I mean, N plus, I had never heard of it, you know, and even though it was already like kind of you had reviewed it, is there's like some like way that you can find these small indie things?
It's a great question. I mean, I think it's changed a lot too, because 10 years ago it was just a matter of like tuning into a handful of websites. You know, it was pre-streamers and YouTubers, and the sort of the role of the press in games has changed a lot, and it's not just about sort of like focusing on one set of curators. For me, I feel like I get it. Like, you know, I mean, I kind of hate all social media, but I'm like a prisoner of Twitter. So on Twitter, I feel like I follow enough other people that I like in games, whether it's like other developers or some press people or whatever. And I feel like because I follow enough of them, I feel like interesting things kind of get filtered through their lens and exposed to me as well.
Like their suggestions for games, like anyone playing this, you should try it.
They'll just tweet about what they're excited about, or like, oh man, I'm loving this game. So that's a great way, I think. You know, I think there's game communities like Reset Era, the message board, which is one that I've just like followed for many years. That's one place too where I feel like interesting stuff often sort of like bubbles to the surface that I check out. But I'm not tuned into gaming media. Like I don't listen to, you know, including my own. I don't listen to, and sorry to you guys, I don't listen to gaming podcasts. Like I listen to podcasts, but for whatever reason, it's like all the podcasts I listen to are not games. It's like whatever, science or comedy or something else. But
hey, none taken. I mean, I listen to you know, Star Talk a lot. You know, I don't listen to always gaming podcasts. So I get it.
Yeah, no, it's just always interesting, and that's why I was just curious seeing from a side perspective, you know. And I was able to get Theo into one of the games, Killer Queen Black,
or that bomb game that we tried.
Oh yeah, and also Keep Talking and Nobody Else Explodes, you know. And I feel that Nick is
kind of like indies are kind of at this weird like middle avenue where you still hear it word of mouth or by a friend, or it's getting publicity or it's getting promoted. You know,
definitely.
It's still growing, but it's still at that like cool, like it still feels very indie. So
yeah. I mean, I still appreciate with like indies that like, or like the conventions that really give the opportunities to the indies, because like if you ever go to PAX, like PAX has a great area for indies, and so many. That's how I got into Contrast when it was before it came out. At indie game, and that's how I discovered it. Was just because I went to PAX, and there was such a great environment.
I gotta go back and finish that. Thanks for reminding me about that.
You're welcome.
I mean, I remember getting Contrast back when it first came out.
Like, I mean, that's another game on the list that I haven't actually finished, but I own. But
yeah, no, there's tons. But I love just checking out like who's playing what on indie scenes, you know, because those are like I get the flavor of the month, you know. Like right now, Knockout City is still like reigning supreme-ish. But you know, like once the next one comes out, like everyone's just like, "Yo, like you gotta check it out." And they're moderately cheap too. You know, like they're $5 to $10, 15 usually at like max-ish. You know, quote unquote.
And a lot of them are decently long for that price. Too.
Yeah. Oh man, like it is. They put heart and soul, and that's what you see
back, baby.
the most. Like,
well, sorry about that. That's
no worries.
The first time I've ever done that. I just kicked my power outlet and just all my stuff.
Yes,
I totally do that all the time.
I've done that before too, dude.
In my 13 years of podcasting, I've never done that. So I'm sorry.
Hey, there's a first for everything.
Hey, but no, like I love that. Just like you know, like you can feel the heart and soul of every indie game that they put in. Like you feel it from the first minute all the way to the very end. You ride along the whole time. My friend just finished off Monster Monster something, and it was, and we would all just play along with him. Like he would stream it, and you'd get all these different monsters, and all of us would just start naming it these like random things. You know, just because like you go along this journey, you do go along a journey, and it's not, and even Journey was amazing. Yeah. But you go along this journey, and you're just like, this is like one like small group of people that is just like, this is like what I want to see. This is what like my vision of the game is, and it's just like, man, like to put it into reality.
There's really been a thirst for originality and different perspectives and different looks. I think that's what indie has really brought, was just a very imaginative, different types of games that people find unique and
true variety.
Yeah, true variety.
That's why it's.
And I think we're getting more and more appreciative of that and wanting that.
And Nick, let me ask you a question. So, did we, when the Vita finally was like, we finally got that nail in the coffin on the Vita, did we really lose a champion on the indie side? Because I mean, that platform was great for indies.
It was, yeah. It was. I mean, a lot of my favorite indie games too are like Splunky. Even I think that was like my favorite version of Splunky. So that was, yeah. I played it a lot for years, and it was sad to sort of like see it die down as a place people would port games to. But I was like, you know, long gone by that point. Yeah, I love that. I love that little thing.
Hey, I still play mine.
Yeah, I feel like Matt's gonna start a little petition, a little online.
What's funny is Twitter's doing
hashtag revive Vita.
It's not even that. The Twitter's doing it for us because you know, Nintendo announced the new Switch with the OLED this week, and everybody has been saying, "Oh, look, Vita did that how many years ago?"
Yeah.
So there's been kind of like this movement. You know, everyone's kind of talking about the Vita all of a sudden again, and it's great to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think Vita fans are really like proselytize it, and both the developers as well. That's why there were like all these great indie games on Vita, is because as soon as developers got their hands on it, they're like, "Oh, this is great! I want to experience my thing on this." You know, maybe it wasn't like the most massively adopted device, but I think everyone who had it like had a lot of love for it.
I've actually been, I mess with Matt about the Vita all the time, but I've actually reiterated and said this too. If it was ever to make a comeback with what we have to work with now in technology and the controllers, the haptics, everything, even remote play.
Yeah.
If there was ever a time for it to come back, I would say now.
I would definitely
it to have
with that.
Quite, you know, a good chance of not dying out, but kind of making kind of a rebirth.
Well, I will also, if I can be a little bit self-promotional on behalf of Panic, who I work for, I will also promote another portable, which you guys may find interesting if you haven't seen it yet, which is the Playdate.
What?
The Playdate,
what?
Which has a little crank that pops out on the side, which can be used in gameplay. It is a black and white screen, very very high contrast. It's really beautiful, and we're taking pre-orders for this thing soon. And it's a cool little device that a bunch of red indie game devs are making games for. So.
Oh, that's super cool.
What?
Awesome.
So, yeah,
does it come in different colors?
Nope, just this color.
Okay.
Just the very it's made. The design of it is by Teenage Engineering, who do a bunch of different like high-end kind of synths and other music equipment based in Sweden. And we put out kind of a Nintendo Direct style video about the Playdate a couple weeks ago. So I'd encourage folks to go check that out. If the concept of having like a weird black and white portable with the crank is intriguing to you, like go watch this little like 12-minute video, because we really break down a lot of
like flashbacks to like Game Boy days.
Yeah.
Game Boy Color. Yeah.
Right,
and it's super thin.
Original,
it is thinner than my wallet, so I can just like.
Totally.
And you said
that's cool.
Nick, you said it was on Kickstarter?
No, so we're gonna be just opening up pre-orders basically really soon.
Okay.
And so it'll just be it'll be like sort of an on pre-order thing. Kind of if you've seen like the Analog ST or any of those, there's been like these other portable platforms that play like like SNES games or Genesis games or whatever.
Mhm.
So in a similar style, only we're not going to close pre-orders. It's not like a finite amount. We're just going to take them
This
as
thing
many
is
as people want, and then
crazy
we'll
looking.
fulfill them as
Cool.
we make them. So yeah,
I'll
but
check
yeah, there's
that
a
out.
lot
Website
of
right
info
now,
online.
which
Cool. Yeah,
to everybody,
play.date. Yeah,
this is really cool.
it's a weird little thing.
It is, and it's
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So anyway, that's that's my pivoting Vita talk into being self-promotional about.
No,
hey.
that's okay,
Hey,
man.
now,
we are all for people talking about their projects and
Yeah,
what's coming
plug
out
it in.
especially that's
as
cool.
long
I
as it
really
does
like
not
that.
break, as long as it doesn't break an NDA, we're good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I wish I could tell you about like the thing that I'm like just embarking on a new thing of sort of a bigger scale than I have in the past with the new team that I really want to talk about, but it's sort of in process right now.
Oh,
And hopefully it's something where when it comes out in a couple of years, I'll be able to come back and talk about in depth.
Oh, most definitely, most
Absolutely.
definitely.
exciting.
So
Something to look forward to.
Yeah.
So Nick, something that we're all about is just it being kind of like a game night, when you're talking with friends and family and stuff like that. So what is your favorite game, whether it's card game, board game, video game, whatever it is? What is your favorite game to play for game night when you are able to have one with family and friends?
What's the family game night game?
COVID. During COVID.
As soon
What's
as you
the
throw in,
challenge accepted game?
yeah. Oh, well, man, as soon as you threw in board games, that's tough because I'm a big board gamer as well. I wish I could like.
Oh, sweet.
I have like a massive closet with several hundred games right over there that I pivot around. There is a game. I'll just tell you about this very weird specific game called Wind the Film, which is made by a Japanese publisher called Sashi and Sashi, and I'm very into Japanese games as well. And I usually, in normal times, I do like an annual trip there, and I go sort of do some deep shopping and bring back a whole bag of games. And you can import some of them, but some of them you gotta go hunt down on foot.
Because the shops the shops out there, man, they've got libraries.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So Wind the
awesome.
Film is this really interesting game about Japanese street photography in like the 50s, I believe, based on a certain type of camera that could like take two exposures on the same frame of film. And it's just this game. I think Japanese games they have a few things in common, which is why I like them. One, they tend to be smaller scale and come in smaller boxes, like a lot of things in Japan, because people's homes are smaller. So a lot of them are sort of necessitate smaller boxes. I feel like a lot of Western games are like, giant box of like, what's it called? The big classic, like top game of the past few years.
Like Gloomhaven.
Yes, thank you, Gloomhaven.
Yeah.
Which I also have in my closet. But like Gloomhaven's like this like 25-pound game.
Like a 30-pound thing, and it,
with like
30 pounds, and it's got like 5,000 little pieces. Like
and like a session is going to take you 10 hours, whatever. I've sort of gone the other direction where like I love like a 20 to 40 minute game. I think you can knock out. I think aesthetically they tend to be really beautiful. I think just a lot of Japanese art direction is really interesting, and thematically as well. Like this game is about street photography. It's not just whatever like fantasy.
Yeah, it's pinpoint.
Overtaking land.
That sounds
or
interesting.
Very pinpoint.
Really great. And the metaphor of taking film really builds into the gameplay where each turn you have to like snap photos that go you have a hand of cards, but you can't adjust the order of the cards. So you snap a photo and you put it on one end of your hand, and then you have to wind the film in quotes, and you have to move one card somewhere in your hand to somewhere else in your hand, and then play cards from the back of your hand. So it's just this really interesting metaphor for like winding film in a camera, and you're capturing different value pictures. Anyway, I realize I'm describing like a very specific game, but it is like maybe my second favorite board game. And most people I play games with, like they've played it at some point because I've always busted out, and I've brought a couple copies back for them as well. And I think it's just like an incredible game that is difficult to get, but hopefully that's not always the case. I think like there's a French publisher who has the license. A lot of other a lot of publishers based in other countries tend to like license these games for their country. But I'm hoping eventually someone licenses this to bring it to the US, because it's like just one of the best games ever. And I'm reminded of that every time I play it. So that's probably my weird game night pick.
I would be a nerd with that game.
Great.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely your wheelhouse.
As soon as you went to
wheelhouse.
Photography, I mean,
I am like
straight.
I'm
to
like
Matt.
Justin. Like Justin and I have actually talked on Twitter and stuff like that about our cameras. It's so weird. We're
Justin is a deep photography nerd.
Yes, he is, and I am jealous of some of the equipment he has.
No, that stuff is expensive
So-
too.
Yes, it is. I mean, my camera body alone was $1,600.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and it takes some gorgeous shots. I mean, I'm a Canon guy now. Justin's now moved on to Sony glass and whatnot, which Sony's making some really good glass. So as we kind of wind things down tonight, Nick, what have you been playing lately? If you have any time to play.
yeah. I tried. I mean, it is difficult. Like sometimes when you work for yourself, you can just spend all your time working if you let yourself. So, but I tried to sort of have a good work-life balance, especially while we're still kind of semi-lockdown, just so that I can, stay healthy and balanced and everything, which can be difficult. But the game I've been playing most recently, which is a game I've played like a million hours of over the years. I don't know if you guys have ever played the Earth Defense Force series. Anybody?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay.
No.
I got one or two.
Yeah.
It's just so it started as like a budget series in Japan on the PS2 days. And I'm playing Earth Defense Force 5 currently. I'm on my 4th playthrough with a friend. We're like 210 hours in.
Wow.
I think, and I will write this Medium article or this diatribe somewhere one day. I think it is the best shooter. And has been the best shooter for most of its existence. It's kind of like a cult beloved thing for how goofy and silly it is, because it's a game where like sort of giant bugs and aliens have invaded the Earth, and each level is just like fighting a horde of giant ants or robots or Godzilla type creatures, and it's just a big dumb action game. But I think there's actually a lot of really brilliant, funny, interesting game design within that framework. And let me turn my air filter off. Sorry. And it got all angry and loud because, again, California air just comes and goes in quality. So there's been several of them throughout the years. And again, we're sort of deep into many playthroughs on this one. It's like my comfort food. I play with my friend Alfredo, one of my best friends who lives in LA. So it's like the only game I really play online, but it's like a way I keep in touch with him. And it just ends up being a nice social lobby, like a lot of these things. But I think it's just a brilliant series. There's like an endless amount of content in them, and it doesn't feel cynical. It feels very generous with the different fun things you can do. It has different character classes that all play very differently, and that's why we're on our 4th playthrough, is because there's 4 character classes and we change classes each time. So we're playing through with every different pair
Oh, nice.
of characters. One just came out called Earth Defense Force World Brothers on Switch and PS4, which is, it looks a bit, it has a very different art design. It looks more like Roblox, and I kind of hate how it looks. But I will still play it because it's in the series. And so this one, we're kind of finally wrapping up so that we can move on to that one. And also Earth Defense Force 6, the next mainline game in the series. There's some video out there for that. That's been announced. It's sort of one of the few series that still comes to Japan first and then comes to the US like a year later. Like it usually does in the sim ship. That one I also might try to import because I'm crazy. It's just a big dumb shooter, but I think it's actually also brilliant and very satisfying and does scale and just action set pieces in a way that like no other game does, and I find it very satisfying. So that's the main one. I've also been playing a little bit of Manifold Garden, which was a really beautiful indie game that came out like a year ago or so on like a bunch of platforms, including PS4 and Apple Arcade. It got a PS5 patch recently. You might have seen a screenshot of it at some point. It looks like an MC Escher painting, very sort of like black and white, very stark, but sort of crazy, infinitely repeating geometry. You should just Google some screenshots because it's really stunning. And it's this guy, William Cheer, the developer based in Chicago. He is an architecture guy. He wasn't a developer. He was an architect. And he sort of assembled a game and built this team. And I find that I'm really enjoying these last few months playing games, both that and other games I've been playing for my podcast, made by people outside of games. I think if you bring a non-games mentality and you aren't sort of leaning on the history of games, you can tend to make some more interesting stuff that people who are really embedded in games wouldn't really think to do. So I think the game turned out really great and is sort of as interesting as it looks, which I think is really high praise.
I was looking at buying that one when I was looking through the indie games last night.
I'm watching a trailer right now. This thing looks gorgeous.
It's really gorgeous, and especially on PS5, it's like silky smooth. And just really interesting and creative, and the sort of game where it's just like fun to walk around and look at things and take screenshots.
Nick, I think my wallet is starting to hate you right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
I totally understand your addiction, man. I have a similar one with Red Dead 2.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's another one where
We
you can
could
just,
do
like,
it
play
Is it
forever.
simply an
Jerry, don't
addiction,
start. Don't
or is
start,
it
Jerry.
raging on problem?
See what I mean?
It's
He
a
needs
fine
help.
line.
It's
Yeah.
my
He needs
go-to.
help.
That
No, he's-
one is also. I get it. I totally
I
get
think-
the obsession.
Yeah, I think people have games that have a different role in your life, and especially
Mhm.
the last year and a half being really difficult. It's like comfort food,
Yeah.
and it's something where
Yeah.
your relationship changes to the game with how you play it, and you have a different sort of like emotional connection with it.
Mhm.
And I think those games, like I'm sure we all have those games, and it just plays a different role in your life. It's not a thing I want to play because it's the hot, cool new thing, or it doesn't sort of like stimulate me as a creative person necessarily. Or I mean, maybe it did initially, but that's worn off after like hundreds of hours. But it still really like fills my cup in some ways. So I think that's important to have those too. So don't feel any shame about Red Dead.
Oh, I don't.
No.
I find it
He's proud of
interesting
it.
only because when I played of Red Dead 2, I like that is a game that I feel like hates its player more than most games. Where I think just like doing a lot of basic things was like such a struggle in a way that I really like. It made me respect it. I was like, man, you like really want me to like clean my horse in a way that is like
it was
annoying
truly
and not-
made
Yeah.
for a true Rockstar fan.
yes, exactly.
Because
It's
like
Rockstar-
if you're on your horse, you got to ride your horse from there to the other side of the map.
it was almost
there's
like
no-
Rockstar was like, we can do anything we want. Let's try to just make a game that like is just like some things are just like mundane and awful to do, but we're still going to sell a million copies because we can. So we're just going to make it difficult. So
and
I mean,
make
I
it
respect-
realistic.
I respect exactly like realism at the expense of everything else. So I really respect it, and I enjoyed what I played of that game. But it's like to me, again, like that's your comfort game. It's like, man, it's like a rough comfort game because that game is not comfortable.
Yeah, man. No, I'm not like already a huge Rockstar fan, but loved the first Red Dead, but everything that I was hoping for and like expected.
It's
Because I'm a big Western fan too.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I can just ride, travel. I could camp and just be.
no.
That
You
is
could
my
fish.
You'd fish for
I
hours.
fish like
Forever.
crazy, man.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh
Sit
my
there.
God.
Oh yeah.
We'd be trying to play, all of us get online. It would be Jerry and Thea, my wife, and I. We'd all be trying to get online to play. Jerry'd be like, yeah, I'll be there in a few, right?
Got fish to catch. Yeah.
Hour later, where
need
are
those
you? I'm still trying to catch
those legendary
fish.
fish.
Yep.
The legendary animals. I go
Yeah.
for it all, man. Yeah. My like second playthrough, I got all the animals, I got all of the fish, all the legendaries. And like, you know how you scribble in your journal, like the little I'm pretty sure I got every kind of scribble you can find.
Nice. I like how you also could be
Yeah.
describing Animal Crossing, by the way, with everything you just said.
See, that's why I couldn't get into Animal Crossing.
That's why we point over to Matt for
Yeah.
that one.
You're like, I played this game. Yeah.
That's
right.
Matt.
That's why I couldn't get into it because I'm already hooked on one other game. That was already too much. That was another commitment game. Yeah. Couldn't do it. But it was fun.
Jerry, what have you been able to play in the last?
You're gonna laugh at me because it's
Oh,
my
Lord.
It was my other addiction game that I was gonna mention.
Newman's in chat, so
Yeah, I got back in, dude. I'm finishing my third run through of Breath of the Wild.
nice. There you go.
Yeah. So I
Nothing wrong
started.
with
When I stopped playing it, it was still fairly early. So It's like I'm playing the beginning of the game, and I'm having a blast.
Do you ever watch
So-
any of those speed run videos of people going through?
Nope.
Dude, you need to load up. some of
Dude, you need
those
to
things.
watch those. Those are hilarious.
Actually,
These are the
you-
craziest things they
you
do
might be
with
right,
the time
'cause-
stop and launching rocks
Well,
and stuff. It's
there's
so
probably
crazy.
there's
So,
probably a run
Jerry-
happening this week, right? Because Games Done Quick is happening right
Yep.
now. So-
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You might be right because I might want some like tips on how to like climb a bit faster or get like to certain
No.
aries fast.
Oh no,
Because,
dude,
man,
it's not
go from
like
one
you
side
were
of the map to the
rocket.
other in seconds.
Yeah, I feel like the weather is just always against you in that game. It's whenever you're climbing, it immediately starts raining.
Yeah.
Oh my
Well,
god!
okay,
But
I have an
I
important
still love
question
that
for
game.
you as a huge fan of that game.
Mhm.
Because I need to represent my favorite game, the one I wrote a book about. Have you played Shadow of the Colossus?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I even have the
Okay,
have
I
the
can-
re-release on PS4.
I can go on record. I have
Great.
never played it. However, I did try to fire it up last night, but I was just so tired. I was like, I can not give it the full attention to begin with. So that is a game that actually I'm getting ready to start playing.
Great. Oh, no joke,
That's
man.
great.
Like I have to say, my first copy I bought, Jason and I were working together at our video game store. Nice. I could not stop raving about that game because it was one of those first like kind of games that came out that was just so different.
I worked at EB Games at the time, and it had the same effect on me, and that's what got me into games.
Yeah, I destroyed that game when it came out on PS2.
And I think I bring it up mainly because so when I wrote my book on Shadow of the Colossus, this is in the boss fight book series, which is sort of all books about different like classic games or niche games or something by different authors. And one thing I mentioned in there is I think Shadow of the Colossus actually was a very singular game that largely was not very influential in a lot of overt ways. I think Eco, which was like its predecessor, was very influential in games like The Last of Us, Half-Life, and other big series. Shadow of the Colossus was influential in other ways of sort of games about scale to build a sense of awe and minimalist storytelling and reductionist design. But as far as other games that sort of have any sort of the feel of Shadow of the Colossus, there's very few. But this was in a pre-Breath of the Wild world. Breath of the Wild came out, and actually, I think just in terms of being in a big landscape on your horse by yourself,
it's very much like
all the stuff to do. I think it was actually very aesthetically influenced by it. So my book, I think, is not quickly out of date. I've sort of wanted to write like an updated chapter about this, but yeah, I think anyone who enjoys Breath of the Wild, it's like a lot of the DNA of that game, I think, stems from Shadow of the Colossus.
Absolutely, a large portion of it. It's very influential from.
I mean, like the what was it? The director
Fumito Ueda.
Yeah, Ueda. Like all three of his games, Ico, Shadow Colossus, and Last Guardian. All three of them have like, if you take bits and pieces, you can build Breath of the Wild. Honestly, on all three of those games.
Yeah,
and it's just uncanny that you bring that up because it is This was made
2005 for Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, 2005. This is 15-ish years ago.
Yeah,
that is just like it
still holds up because it not only did it stand out, but it was also one of those first kind of games. It was almost like a silent movie. Like there wasn't a lot of like there wasn't any dialogue or like
there was a goal.
Yeah, there was a goal.
There was a goal. There was how do you do this, and the rest was up to you.
All of the cinematics kind of made you interpret the story. Yeah, it was kind of one. Yeah, it really was one of a kind. That's why the opening, fans wanted it to get re-released.
I mean, the opening is gorgeous. I got through that part before my eyes were like, nope. Yeah, we're done.
it'll be there. It'll be there for you. Like many.
It'll be there. It is.
Oh yeah.
And I'm actually gonna go back and do Last Guardian as well.
Nice.
Give that another try and see if I can get through it. It just at the time I played it wasn't holding my interest. So I'm gonna give it another shot. Just to see how it is.
And that's the thing too. You know, like it's all three of Ueda's games. Just like my wife is a huge fan of his. Cool. So like it just instantly was like, she's like, oh my God, it's made by the same people. Like I'm picking it up, and it has that story where it's a story telling a little bit, but you kind of piece everything together yourself.
Yeah,
you know, and it's so great.
And I think Last Guardian as well. That reminded me. I think in some ways, Ueda-san's games are also a little like player unfriendly in the same way I was joking about Rockstar, where they prioritize certain things like animation over responsiveness. So, and that is, you know, I don't think he looks at the gaming landscape and is like, how can I emulate a lot of the standards of what people are used to with how a game should respond or how it should act, or I need things to, you know, be like quick and snappy in an action game. I think he has his own way of doing things, and I think at first it can like rub you wrong or feel like this doesn't control like I expect it to, but I think you need to kind of like, you know, the more open-minded you can be about it and go into it thinking like, okay, I'm going to have a different experience. I'm not going to expect it to feel like other games. I think that's kind of where you can settle into it, and it's really its own thing. But I think that's also turned off a lot of people, especially with Last Guardian. It's like people complained that it was, you know, kind of like an awkward thing to play, which I totally get and I don't disagree with. But like it's a very intentional choice, the things that game chooses to prioritize.
Yeah, if you're not looking like, if you're not opening and taking the other road. Yeah, you can be like this, like, oh, Trico's not responding super well. Like it's so hard for
because
like
it's a big animal that might
a
not
big
want to
animal,
respond to you
like-
always. Yeah.
So Jason, what have you been playing?
I have been playing board games with my wife a lot more lately.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
There's no reviews. What the heck?
Oh, sir, there's a lot of things that I need to write, sir.
Get to
There's
stepping.
oh man, if I could,
I'm behind too. So
What are you
I think
playing?
my backlog of writing board games and mobile games are longer than my backlog of video games.
Video games, probably.
But right now, like me and my wife have started, or we keep playing Zombie Kids right now. It's a legacy, the legacy game where it's 2 to 4 players pick it up in 15. Like the game ends in like 15, 20 minutes.
Cool.
Super quick. But it's pretty much every time you play, there are actually like trophies that you kind of hunt in the manual that you're given.
Oh, really?
So if you clear those, you get trophies, and after a certain amount of games or certain amount of stickers, you open up a new envelope, and something new happens to the board.
Oh, that's cool.
nice.
So
nice.
we've been constantly playing that lately.
When you finally come to visit us,
Bring
bring
it
it with you.
Yeah.
Oh,
I wanna
sir!
play
Right
it.
now, we just opened the 6th or 7th, the 7th envelope out of 13.
Wow.
We've just been playing, dude. We've been playing a lot.
Oh,
Nice.
wow. Cool.
All right.
That one, but more so, like I've been back to playing StarCraft a little bit, OG StarCraft.
Oh, nice.
But
Not playing Division anymore.
I only play Division on Wednesdays now. Like trying to get that Eagle Bear, man. The Eagle Bear.
Have fun with that.
Yeah. So
It's not an easy one to get a hold of.
well, I mean, like the raid group that I keep going with, we keep seeing it. We keep beating the Iron Horse, but it's I don't know why, man. I just can't win rock paper scissors. That is the reason why I don't get it.
All right, Theo.
Gaming's been taking a little bit of backseat. I got a tournament coming up in a few weeks, so I've been hitting up the range a little bit more.
Where at?
Where at for the range?
Where at is the tournament?
Oh, tournament's out in Dublin, Ohio. So it's the Buckeye USAT tournament this year. So hopefully I can do that pretty well. I'm hoping that it's a predecessor or just kind of opens the doors to redeem myself for nationals back in Virginia later on, a few weeks later, because that was not a good tournament. For Nick, I actually do archery, and
nice.
I try to go for. I'm trying to go for the national team at some point.
Oh, badass.
If I can never make it, but
2024, baby.
What
2024.
What game has the best representation of archery?
Oh.
Or maybe none.
Last of Us.
Breath of the Wild.
I hate to say
Horizon.
it. Wii Sports.
I was about to.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
No way.
I was
Totally.
actually.
awesome.
It's Wii Sports all the way for me.
I was about to
Sports
say Sports
Like-
Champions actually. I think had an archery thing too.
Yeah,
That I remember liking.
the wind, the elevation, all the stuff that got into it, and everything. And
Yeah.
I had fun with the motions and that was before I did archery. But yeah, that's the main thing that comes to mind for
That's
the
so
best
funny.
representation of archery.
Nice. Yeah, great. That's a great answer.
Nice.
So for me,
Matt,
it's
what have you been
now,
playing?
it's now week 2 where Animal Crossing has not been fired up.
Yes.
Are we
Oh,
seeing
that's
a
it.
trend here?
Kicking the habit, sir.
Bum,
Kicking
bum,
the
bum.
habit.
Honestly, my Switch hasn't really been fired up other than to swap cartridges out of it for Cody for him playing like Mario Kart and Mario Odyssey and stuff like that. Just haven't felt like playing it really. I've been playing a little bit more on the Vita. I'm
Nice.
back to my addiction of Fat Princess, the match game. that was in
Nice.
there.
You
Piece of
broke
cake.
out Fat Princess?
Classic.
Dude,
Wow.
no, it's the match 3 game. that they did.
Oh,
Yeah.
that
It's
one.
just-
Okay.
It's so simple, and it's just like it frustrates me because I want to beat it on all the different tiers and stuff, and I just keep going back to it, and then the game decides, hey, I'm gonna kick your ass, and there's nothing you can do about it. So there's been that.
Can I recommend a Vita game to you, by the way?
Go for it.
Did you ever play an indie game called Luftrausers?
I did not.
Okay, Luftrausers. This is like German warplanes. This is made by Vlambeer, Rami Ismail, and they made Super Great Box. They made Nuclear Throne, a bunch of other like great indie games. It's just this little like fighter plane game with a very sort of minimalist aesthetic, but you keep unlocking different planes and weapons and stuff, and it's just really satisfying. And I think that's
you already hooked him.
Is like the best, like plays best on Vita for sure.
You already hooked him.
You gotta get it quick before the store closes too.
I'm an Ace Combat guy.
But
no, I've been playing more on the show.
Oh, nice.
How's your season?
I am 22-8 now.
Still keeping that run. It's only 2 losses per week. It's pretty good.
Yeah, so there's that. I tried to play a little bit more of Gran Turismo Sport. It wasn't resonating with me. So I've kind of moved on from it. Honestly, I was talking to Jerry about this when he was over for the 4th of July this past weekend. And honestly, I should have gone with my gut feeling with it because of how we thought about it at E3 when we got to play it, when they had the pods and stuff there. I still think in some ways Drive Club is a little bit better in some regards. But going back to play Drive Club, it's, it has shown its age as well, it did come out in the beginning of the PS4 cycle, back in 2014. So, I kind of moved on from that. Tried to do, like I said, Shadow of Colossus, but I was just too tired for it. Just more playing Ratchet and Clank with the boys. That is kind of like the game that they like to go to bed to and stuff. So we're on our second playthrough.
I didn't even mention that, but I did 100% that game too, the recent one. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And actually,
one trophy
Matt
left
said that there are a lot more Easter eggs if you use the Rhino.
Yes, with the Rhino. As you level it up more.
Oh yeah, Matt was telling me all the ones they found.
Yeah.
So far, I've gotten the Thunderjaw from Horizon.
Insane.
The actual, I found this the other night too, and I'm actually taking pictures of them as I find them because I'm going to do a little thing for the website and stuff. But the saber-tooth cat from Horizon, I can't remember the name of it right now, but that's in it as well.
Oh, no way.
Oh, really? Okay.
I found Sly's Van, Sly Cooper himself, Jack and Daxter.
Wow.
That was cool.
The little guy from Sunset Overdrive.
Nice.
Oh, sweet.
There's a couple more. Oh, and the plane from Uncharted 1, Nathan Drake's Jeep from Uncharted 4.
Sick.
So it's just more and more. I love playing it because I put it on infinite ammo because I want to see all the different stuff that comes out of it. So
that's awesome.
That's been really good to play with the boys. So that's their jam. And then honestly, because I was talking to Theo about this yesterday and where my headspace has been I haven't really alluded to it for the last, week or so, is I've been playing a little bit more Tetris Effect.
Nice.
Nice, man.
Because that is, as our listeners have known this, for 2 years, this Saturday will be the 2-year anniversary of Mom's passing.
Yeah.
And Tetris was our jam, going back on the original Nintendo, sitting downstairs at the house. So it has been helping me a little bit take that edge off just enough.
Good for you.
But I haven't really done a ton of gaming. I'll play a little bit of MTG Arena and whatnot. But I've been kind of just chilling, just spending time with the family a little bit here and there, and not quite as gaming the last week or so to speak. Going back through Star Trek Next Generation, oddly enough. God, that show does not hold up. It's like back in the 90s when it came out and you tried going back to watch the original Star Trek, it just doesn't. It was the campiness and everything. Yeah, campiness is there too. So it was like I watch this religiously every week. Oh no. Other than that though, it's just been chilling.
Good, man.
All right.
A bit. So as we close things out, Nick, why don't you let the listeners know where they can find you on social media if they would like to follow you.
Yeah, just at nsuttner, NSUTTNER, nsuttner on Twitter. That's probably the thing I use most. And there's links there on my profile to my website, which I need to update, and the podcast I do and other stuff. So that's appreciated if anyone wants to check out my stuff or check out any of the games that I mentioned.
Nice. Absolutely. So Nick, I want to thank you for crashing game night with us tonight.
Yes, thank you so
great
much.
having you on.
Thanks for letting me crash.
You are more than welcome to come back anytime you want. You have no
couch is ready.
Please. So yes,
couch is there anytime you want it. But to everybody else that kind of jumped in and watched us on Twitch and is going to listen to the podcast this weekend, thank you guys, for always crashing game night with us on a weekly basis. We do this for you guys, we do it for us and whatnot, but it's more, I love seeing that we bring joy to people around the world. It still amazes me that we have this and stuff like that. So thank you guys once again. It's the first time tuning in, guys, make sure you hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button on the platform that you were listening to us on. And as always, be excellent to each other.
Stay frosty.
Whoa!
Wow!
Stay frosty. Wow!
No.
You threw it. Oh,
that's why we were waiting in
anticipation.
Like,
where's
the Stay Frosty?
You got me, bro. Oh, the times have changing. What's up, guys? Thank you guys for viewing, subscribing, listening, getting in tuned, finding yourselves. Thank you. But also, most importantly, please show your support for the LGBTQ plus community, Black Lives Matter, and stop the Asian hate. Once again, guys, if you see something, report it, say something, and just show your support. If it's just lending a hand, giving a hug, or a compliment, let's just keep being kind and let's make that change. Let's make it better for all of us. So thank you guys so much for listening and viewing.
Yes, thank you, Nick, for joining us on the couch.
Nick, thank you so much for joining.
As Matt had said earlier, you are always welcome on this couch.
No, thank you. This has been great, and I fully support everything that Jerry just said.
Thank you.
Definitely, it might not be the same couch, but the couch will always be there for you, Nick, to come back and visit us whenever you want.
Very kind.
We can always talk indie games all day, every day. Board games especially too.
Yeah.
On top of Jerry, we are at virtually the end of the pandemic. I'm still an advocate. Please get vaccinated if you are able to. It is just about all ages, like above age of 5, I believe now.
I think so,
it's
5 or 6 or something.
Yeah, 5 or 6, something like that. But it is still, if you are able to get this, please get it. We are, I believe, 60% now.
Something like that.
We're getting there.
Of the reported deaths, 99% of the reported deaths now are those that are unvaccinated.
Yeah. So we are literally, please get vaccinated, because we are starting to open up. We are starting to be maskless. We are starting to be remembering what normality was, 2 years ago almost. That's an insane word. Like 2 years ago, we would have been at E3, would have been chilling, would have been hanging out and having fun. But please stay safe. Even if you are vaccinated, great. Thank you so much. If you are unvaccinated, please still stay safe. There is that new Delta strain that is appearing in the news. Mm-hmm. So please stay safe. 6 feet if you can. If you're unvaccinated, try minimalizing social gatherings of any sort. But we are almost there. We are almost at that C grade, that 70, that passing grade. We are almost there. And once we are there, then we'll be able to actually unlock all the amenities that we forgotten already,
Yeah.
So please keep staying safe. And
absolutely,
my man, again, and thank you, Nick. If you want to plug anything else, I'm probably going to get that play date.
Go watch the play date video.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. So cool.
Yeah.
Like, it is so tiny, but yeah, check out all of Nick's stuff on his, as he said out earlier.
Thank you.
My man Theo, my man.
Everybody out there, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Till next time, TTFN. Ta-ta for now.
Good night, everybody.
Later.